That's Air Force uniform. For the Army, inside?
Oh, in your little handbook there?
Navy, yeah, this was issued by the Navy. Navy and Air Force. Oh, maybe somewhere in there. Oh, the Army's in the front.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I hadn't looked at it forever.
Well, George,
Here we go.
let me start by saying thank you for letting me take your oral history today.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to start out with some real basic information. Just where were you born?
I was born in Hanover, Michigan, November 2nd, 1938.
Who were your parents and what were their occupations?
Well, my parents were Tom and Murdy Bell Cochran, and my dad didn't have a job that winter. My mother was a housewife, and that was it. My grandmother owned a telephone company in Hanover at that time, and mother helped her with a switchboard and some stuff, and she kind of helped them get by. And my dad shot rabbits out back for food, and then picked up whatever he could pick up for work. But 38 was there weren't a lot of jobs, and it was a small town.
Okay. Were you an only child?
No, I have a sister that was born June 21st of 41.
Okay, so she's
she's passed.
She's just a little younger than you.
21 months.
Yeah, awesome. Now, did your dad serve in the military at all?
No.
No.
No, he worked when the war broke out in the late 30s. In 38, I was born, and in November, and in spring of 39, we moved to Coldwater, and my dad took over a Shell gas station, managed it, and he worked at that for a few years, and they bought a cottage at Rose Lake, which was about 16 miles south of town. And he worked there, and then he left there and bought his own at the west end of town, because the Shell station was the first thing you saw when you come in from the east end on US 12. Then it was 12 between Detroit and Chicago. Okay. And then he got a job with Quality Springs, which were building springs and things for weapons, and it was a defense plant. I mean, defense operation, military operation. So he didn't get drafted. They didn't come after him. They didn't draft him. In 44, he ran sideways with the plant manager and told him what he could do with his job. And we moved from Coldwater then to Hanover. Moved in with my grandmother. And that was the fall of 44. And then he got a job on the railroad, which exempted him again from the draft. Mm-hmm. But he did go report. He got his draft notice. He went reported in Coldwater to the armory for the draft, and the railroad had got him off. And so he worked then from 44 to 80 on the railroad.
Awesome. A little bit about you now. Were you drafted or were you enlisted?
I was drafted. In August of, I got my notice in August of 61.
Okay. How did it feel getting drafted? I know that's a weird question, but
I didn't mind. I was happy to be drafted. We got married a year after school, and in 1957.
Okay.
So by that time we'd been married 4 years.
Okay.
We had kind of started working on having children.
Mm-hmm.
And we were working with doctors and so forth a little bit about the children. And then the wall was built, the Berlin Wall, and Kennedy came on and talked about it and said he was going to up the draft. And I told my wife we'd be going, and sure enough, I got my notice. And then we left. I worked out there. I was working for Tom McCann's out there, shoe store. And we left there in September because I had a report October 1st to Jackson County, because that's where I was drafted out of. I could have converted it and gone in California, but then my wife would have been out there all alone. So we said, I'll just go back and we'll go back to Michigan. At least she'll be with my folks and her folks and so forth. She'll have family while I'm gone. And that's what we did. So.
How about your parents and your sisters feeling then with you being drafted? Were they supportive of that decision?
I think mostly. They knew that I didn't mind, and I was once said, "Hey, I'm going to go. I want to do it." My uncle had served in the Navy in World War II. He was a CB in the Pacific. They worked. He saw the practice atomic bomb out there on the island when one of the test shots when they blew an island away or whatever. But anyway, he ran heavy equipment for the Seabees, caterpillars and backhoes or cranes and stuff.
Awesome. Now, you say you were drafted.
Mm-hmm.
I've talked with other veterans that obviously had received their draft notice as well, and then they were like, "I'm just going to enlist." So, did you think about enlisting, or did you say the draft was fine?
Draft is fine. I didn't, my wife's cousin was a career naval pilot officer, and because of his service and stuff, I thought, well, we'll see what happens.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't absolutely against making a career of it.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't going to jump in and do it immediately, but I said, we'll see what happens. And once I was in for a while, I said, I'm not going to make a career of this.
Thank you for that. Now, you did say you were drafted a little bit older. You weren't fresh out of high school.
Yeah, I was 23 when I was drafted.
Awesome. What were you doing for work at that time? What was available?
I was working for Tom McCann shoe stores in California. I had worked for him in Jackson right out of high school or after I turned 18 in November after I graduated. And worked up to assistant manager and so forth, and then we decided to go out there. I had left them because in Michigan at the time, they wanted me to get a promotion. I would have to go to Detroit to get my own store, my own shoe store, and we didn't want to do that. Detroit didn't look very inviting to us, whatever's down there. So I had left there and I went to work on the railroad, in the yard office or yards in Jackson, and that's where I was at when we decided to pull up and go to California, and so we did.
Did you ever think about college at all? Was that on your mind at all at this time?
It had been, but we got married a year out of school, and I said, no, I'm going to not. And none of my ancestors, would put it that way, my parents or my grandparents. My grandmother graduated from Concord, but anyway, she went to Eastern Normal at the time. It's now Eastern Michigan University for what was it? She said she was there for 12 weeks or 8 weeks or something. Anyway, she had graduated from Concord from high school and with good grades, And so they went, and she took a teacher's training course, and then she taught school. She taught country school. And she always wanted me to go to college. And I always said I was going to go to college. Well, marriage and all this, and got to put it off. Eventually I did go. I was 47 when I went. No, excuse me, 37 when I started college. Graduated at 40.
Oh, we'll get to that
From Western.
Oh, we'll get to that in here in a
Okay.
little bit. Now, back to your service. Can you tell us a little bit about the first days that you joined, going on into boot camp and what that was like?
Yeah. The day before I was supposed to go, I went down to the barber and I had him give me I thought a military haircut. Went down to Fort Detroit, whatever it was, Fort Wayne in Detroit, and was processed in, sworn in, and it was the day after Thanksgiving in 1961. It was 29th was sworn in. And then they put us on a train, and we took the train to, I'm trying to remember, I don't think we took the train all the way to Leonardwood. I think we took the train to St. Louis. And then they bussed us out to Fort Leonard Wood, if I remember right. Mm-hmm. I didn't pay too much attention. Anyway, of course, the next morning they got us out, and we were in civilian clothes and everything, and ran us through, and everyone got a haircut. Regardless of what my hair looked like, it was short then, but I got another haircut that cost me $1. So anyway, then we got our uniforms, and we got all our shots. I don't remember how many, but they had air guns and shooting us and needles, and they were shooting us. And then they had this needle about this long and about that big around that they poked in your butt. And that one hurt. We had a couple of guys that took it, that were in the group with me. And the one guy was so, his body fat was like minus 4%. I mean, he didn't have any body fat on him. And he was on his bunk for 2 days. He couldn't move. He was just, that was it. But they finally got him going and so forth. But anyway, then we moved around and moved into our training. What was it? I was going to say engineering. Anyway, the basic training, and just went through it. That was early November or early December. I'm sorry. Weather wasn't bad yet. But 1st Battalion, 2nd Regiment, February of 92 or 62, and that was our graduation.
Awesome.
And we went through basic, and the Rivera, our sergeant, in a company sergeant, and he picked out all the guys that wore glasses, and we were firemen. We didn't have to do KP. So, if we were firemen, I said that's good. I don't mind that at all. And so, 2 nights a week we were up half the night, because there were coal furnaces in those old barracks then. Not gas, no air conditioning, no, just the old coal furnaces, and left over from World War II. And we came home for Christmas, and we had a bus headed for Michigan, and some of them in all the way through. We got off in Jackson. You guys got off here in Kalamazoo and so forth. We came up Illinois on 66. The snow was snowing so hard that the bus driver could barely see. And he said, "You guys want to go? I'll take you if you want to go. But everybody's got to agree that we'll go ahead, keep on going in this, and not pull off somewhere." And we said, "We're going." We're driving on the bus. The only thing goes by us is Volkswagen Beetles, and he wasn't passing anybody because almost everybody was off. It was a long ride from St. Louis to Chicago, and once we got to Chicago, got up around Chicago, it let up a little bit, and we came on across on 12 then. Actually came up to what is now 94, this route.
Yeah.
Yeah. They changed they changed the road numbers and whatever. Of course, they didn't build these highways till 64 and 65 and so forth.
Yeah, because that was Eisenhower, right?
Yeah. Eisenhower put those in.
Yeah.
Yeah, he'd seen them in Germany.
Yeah.
He said, "We're going to do that."
Yeah.
And it was great for the auto industry.
Well,
Terrible
sure.
for the railroad.
Well, absolutely.
And buses. They're terrible for the railroad.
Mm-hmm.
Because
everybody could drive now. You could go everywhere with your car.
And the auto industry was great, and they could hire all the soldiers when they came home from the war. It worked.
You mentioned KP, an abbreviation. Could you just explain what KP is? I'm not sure what that is.
Kitchen patrol.
Kitchen?
It's working in the kitchen.
Oh.
Washing dishes. Peeling potatoes.
The not fun jobs.
The not fun job. They didn't hire. They didn't have anybody. They didn't hire people to do that work. The soldiers did the work.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you for that. Now, how long was your boot camp? Or your basic training?
8 weeks.
8 weeks.
Well, it says 7 weeks because it was 0 week and then 7 weeks of actual.
Sure. 8 total.
Yeah.
That's fine. What skills would you say that basic taught you that you didn't have before going in?
A little bit of self-discipline. Yes, I've been hunting and winter, all my life, out in the cold, ice skating and sliding and dealing with the cold. At least I was there in the wintertime when I could deal with the cold. I didn't have to deal with 110 degrees in the middle of Missouri in the summertime. So, but no, that was it. A little bit more about obviously how to handle a M1 Cochran rifle, and I guess it helped me learn respect for other people and have a better understanding, because we had in our company some guys from Philadelphia and from Detroit and from Illinois somewhere. I don't remember now just where. But so these were all people that I hadn't, other than the fact that we'd gone to California, but out there I wasn't out there long enough, and my jobs out there when I was working for Tom McCann's, which is what I did when I got to California. Real quick, I became an assistant manager because I had good background and stuff. So my life was not that different, other than the environment we lived in. Lived at Pacific Beach down on the ocean and worked in a store 16 miles inland, and every mile you went inland, the temperature went up 1 degree. But that was just part of the climate. That was what was there, and so the diversity of what we had in a company was a much greater than anything I'd ever ran into. And so I think I learned to get along a little bit better with people. I never had too much trouble with that, but growing up or school or whatever, I was reasonably popular.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. What was your most vivid memory of your time in basic training as you look back at it? Does anything stand out?
Yeah. Eating frozen cake out in the field at the rifle range. We'd be out there. It was cold, I mean, it was below zero, or not below. Excuse me. It was below freezing. It was in the 20s, 10s, 15s, and 20s, and we'd be out there, and of course your hands get cold and all that stuff. But they'd bring out from the mess hall. They'd bring these big pots that were heated and all that stuff, and they'd bring dessert cake. So we'd go through with our pans, with our pans and stuff, and eat quick because the food would cool off. And when you wanted dessert, the cake was frozen. By the time you got to it, it was frozen hard. That's one of the biggest things that other than that, and I enjoyed the rifle range.
Yeah.
Because I'd had my own gun. I bought my own shotgun when I was 12.
Okay.
And I'd handled guns from before that. And we hunted squirrel and rabbits and deer. My dad hunted deer from 1940, I think it was 40 or 39 or 40, until 1980, every year. He never missed a year in the woods in northern Michigan. So that was quite a trip.
Was that the only thing you got to shoot? Was the M1 Garand?
Yep. We got to throw grenades.
Okay.
But that was all we had. That's all they had. That's all the Army had when I went in. Mm-hmm. They were developing the AR-14s and the other weapons. But that and the small M1 carbine.
Okay.
Well, that's a beautiful little one.
Yeah. Looking back at your time in boot camp or basic training, does a particular instructor, do you remember any of your instructors? Do you remember anything they did?
Yeah, I remember, because the drill instructor for the Company C was a hard nose. We had a guy that drove us and didn't take a crap. Mm-hmm. Okay, Rivera was tough, but he was honest and he was fair, and you didn't mess with him. You didn't backtalk him. But there, one in Company C was just mean.
Yeah. Yeah,
he was just mean. And we kind of felt sorry for those guys on that over there in that ex-billet.
What was the most horrific, I guess, memory then you have of it? Like, was there ever a particular bad time you were getting IT'd, intensive training, or whatever, put in the same pit?
There was a stupid thing I did.
Oh, what's this?
Yeah. I had a kid from New York. And he's not in that picture because he never finished basic. And he had the dumbest mouth, not ugly mouth, but dumb, just stupid. And he thought he was really smart. And maybe he was intelligent, but he wasn't smart. And he just rattled on everybody. And I got sick of it. And I don't remember. Anyway, I challenged him for some reason, stupid. And so we started wrestling. And all of a sudden my watch popped off. And I looked at him, and I looked at my watch. You're not worth my watch. And I turned around and walked away from him. That was it. But it was just a stupid thing that I did, and I don't know if it was what, I don't know what caused me to be that way, to do that, other than the fact that probably some nerves or something built up because of where we were and frustration and so forth, probably. But
Well, did he ever cause group punishment? As in, like
No.
you said, he was had a mouth on him or whatnot.
yeah,
Did he ever?
no, he never did, because
Okay.
Revere didn't do that.
Okay.
That company she did, but he didn't do that stuff. No, he you screwed up. You screwed up. You didn't screw up everybody else.
That's actually kind of relieving in a way. Like, I always hated mass group punishment. One guy messed up, we all paid for the price, especially in boot
Well,
camp.
and I know the principle
Yeah.
behind that. I know why it's done, but he didn't have to do that. He built respect without even, being a hard case.
Just that eye look and yep.
Boom.
Yep.
And you knew he'd been Army light heavyweight champion boxer.
Oh.
So you didn't want him hitting you either.
No.
Of course, he wouldn't have. He couldn't have. But
All right, George. I want to open the can of worms. So what happened after basic training?
I came down on orders.
Mm-hmm.
Even let's see. Wait a minute. Yeah, I came down on orders to go to cook school.
Okay.
Came home for leave after with the 2 weeks or 10 days, whatever it was. Went right back to Fort Leonard Wood, because that's where cook school was. Got in there, had 0 week, and went into the kitchen in a mess hall and learned how to cook for 350 people, along with the crew that I was instructor. We had the 3 instructors that we had were all less than a year left for retirement. 2 of them had jobs as a chief chef, top chef in New York, and one of them was going to be in another hotel in Chicago. They at that time, big money.
Yeah.
But anyway, that went well. We learned. You walk in and they give you a half a beef. A half a beef. You throw it on the butcher block, cut it up, and make it food. We learned how to do that. I'd already known how to do it with deer.
Yeah.
Okay, I knew how to do it, or squirrel, or whatever. So that helped, but they taught me a lot more about the intricacies of getting that meat cut just right and peeling it off the bone and
Getting that
getting that rib down the back and all of those out and stuff, and then the shanks and stuff.
Okay.
So that was interesting, and then the recipes, just working with the recipes and the big pots and pans and so forth, and of course we, at the same time, while we didn't, we also had to clean up a lot of our own pans. We didn't have somebody on KP. We had some people that were doing the kind of some of the washing and cleaning up, but a lot of it we did ourselves and so forth. And then learned how to sharpen a knife and all that.
How long did that schooling go for?
6 weeks.
Okay. Now, when you were drafted into the Army, I wasn't drafted, obviously, I was enlisted. Did they ever tell you what your MOS was? You're gonna be was cook?
No.
Did you feel cook was the best use for you?
No.
Okay.
But I was in the Army.
Yeah.
Okay, and we're the 60s,
Mm-hmm.
and I knew I didn't want to be infantryman
Mm-hmm.
as such. Okay, and I knew how to type. My grades were mediocre because I didn't work very hard in high school, but I still, when I took the tests, all the tests, I tested out high.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know it then. I didn't, when I first went in basic and all that, I didn't know. In fact, I didn't know it until the thing came up in a little bit we're going to talk about. So I went back there, and then Leonard Wood, for the cook school, I could have my wife with me. Now, I could go home one night a week and every other weekend because we shifted and did the shifts. And where we were at Waynesville, we were in a grouping of there was 4 little rooms or apartments, bedroom, living room, all in one, and a kitchen and a bathroom, all in a square, a lot smaller than this room. But there were 4 of those in the front, and there were like 3 trailers that were, and these were all for permanent party. We got there, and my dad and her dad brought her out, put her in a motel out the drive into Leonardwood, and she took them back, put them on the bus and sent them back to Michigan, and then she eventually came in and was able to pick me up. That was the first week of cook school, and then we went into Waynesville, and we started looking at an apartment, someplace for her to live. And we looked at 2 or 3 chicken coops. Basically, they were chicken coops. And then another one that was a kind of a multi-building. I think 3 little units that were separated, and then there was a common wash place with a washing machine and a shower, because there weren't any showers in the rooms. There was a bathroom, a stool, and a sink, but no shower. So you had to go in behind the washer and dryer, and it was space to take a shower. And finally, somebody, and I don't remember now who, somebody told us that one of the apartments out where we ended up was open, but that they only rented to to permanent party.
Mm-hmm.
And the lady worked in a general store downtown. I took somebody was taking us around. A realtor or somebody was taken from the OS. Brain keeps going dead. Anyway, they took us over down to there. I said, take us down there. I want to talk to her. And we're in the middle of the store, and there's people in there. And I talked to her, and she said, well, we really only, I literally, in uniform, in my khakis, got on my knee in the middle of the store and said, please.
Wow. So you're saying the housing...
And she let us go there. She rented it to us. And it was great because when I wasn't there, the other ladies, we all got together. Women, they're all young. You know, everybody's young, and E5s was the highest rank in the place. And anyway, so they had somebody that they talked to and buddy back and forth with, and that kind of stuff. And one of the guys that lived in one of the trailers worked in personnel. Well, we're going through cook school and getting down towards the end. We're in the 7th week, I guess, we had a week left before school was over. And he started looking for us for my orders, because there were other guys that had orders for a week already about where they were going and stuff. And he said, "Well, here's what happened. You know, your orders are to go to, I don't know, it's Korea or somewhere. I don't remember now, but you're not supposed to be here. You're supposed to be at Fort Gordon, Georgia, going to crypto school." And so he said, "I've got an appointment for you tomorrow. You got to come down to headquarters and sit down with my boss and other people." And so I did, and they said, "Well, they explained to me what happened," and I'm looking at that and listening to them, and I'm thinking, and they explained what cryptography, what the crypto school was and what that amounted to, and I said, I looked at, for some reason I used my watch as a reference, and I looked at my watch and I'm thinking, okay, I've been here, I had basic training, and 8 weeks, and I went home for vacation. I've been back down here now for 6 weeks, and so forth. So if I go there, I'm going to have another 8 or 9 weeks into my 2 years. So let's go. So I said, "I'll go, please." And they said, "You're on." They made it happen. And 3 days later, we were on the road and headed for Memphis, Tennessee, and they had to cross the bottom of Tennessee into Georgia to get to Fort Gordon at Augusta, Georgia. And anyway, we left there. It was the end of March. I'm in my greens, and we landed in Augusta, Georgia at Fort Gordon on April 1st, and I'm in my greens, and it's 98 degrees. Yeah. That was before they had summer fatigues. We had the old cotton fatigues. But anyway, so I'm in the greens, and reported the next day I was in my khakis. But anyway, and that worked out well. We were able to find a nice apartment there, and up in South Carolina, North Augusta, South Carolina, and I had 4 guys that we ran into that I got around during 0 week. We move around a lot. I went and looked up Paul, the kid that had gone to Fort Gordon for me, that was supposed to be in cook school, and went and found him, and he did end up going to Korea as a cryptographer, but not as a cook. Yeah. So anyway, and he said, when I found him, he said, "The funniest thing happened to me." He says, "I was second or third day of school, and anyway," he said, "they came and asked me if I wanted to be an instructor, and they showed me this paper, and he said, 'That's not mine. I went to basic with this guy. That's George Cochran. I'm Paul Cochran.'" And so, at that time, they didn't know that Paul is supposed to go on to cook school or anything else. And so anyway, I get in class. This was 0 week when I found this out. So we're getting in class, and by the second week, I'm pulling out a couple of sleeves and said, "Hey, this is what happened," and they pulled him out to want to be a teacher. I'd like to do that. So as it worked out, they went back. And I ended up being an instructor, and went through 3 weeks of instructor training, or 2 weeks, whatever, of instructor training school. Painted cyclone fence for a few weeks, waiting for my security clearance, and then started teaching in class.
Wow. Now, just so for the record, what is crypto or cryptography? Is that
What is it?
correct?
It's communications. It's secret communications.
Okay.
It's encoding communications. At the time, what they use now is all different. At the time, the Army was still a disk operation. You put the equipment and you put this disk in, and it all jumbles up everything. So if I'm sitting at the machine at my TT-76, and I'm typing a message that came from what I was in Vietnam, came from somewhere up in the country, and I'm typing that, what comes out on the tape is a series of 5-digit letters. There'll be 5 letters to space, 5 letters to space on this whole tape that runs out, 25 feet long or whatever. And then that is transmitted from, we were in the third basement in the 3-Corps in the 3-Corps Arvon headquarters down there, and we had a armed guard outside the door, and we were sharing it with Air Force. Air Force had the modern equipment. They were using like computer stuff already. The Army wasn't. They were still using World War II stuff. Yeah.
I hate to interrupt you, but I gotta tell you. I'm sorry. Is that?
No, you're fine.
I'm checking out places for Scott.
Hmm?
I called O'Duffy's Pub.
Yeah. Anyway, we would work 12-hour days, 12-hour shifts, and then we worked. I don't know. It swung around enough, so we worked like 3 days or 4 days, 3 days 1 week and 4 days another week or whatever, with the shifts coming around. And you work nights, and then you work days, and then nights and days, and then I say work. We down there typing these messages. They would go to, as far as I knew, they went to Clark, and then probably went to Pacific headquarters in Hawaii, and then to DA. As far as I know, that's probably where they went. I don't know that for a fact, but that would have been, at the time, that would have been what would have been normal, I think.
Maybe I'm just being a grunt here. Cryptography or crypto school sounds difficult. Was it a challenging schooling?
No.
No?
No, because what we had to do is learn to type. I already knew how to type. And we had to learn to type. We didn't have to learn the coding.
Oh, okay.
The machine did the coding for us. So we didn't have to learn that. Now, had I gone on, stayed in, and gone on to other things in the job, probably at some point I would have gotten more involved in more of the coding and so forth. Maybe. But no, the machine did that for us. But we were reading, well, secret. I didn't get any top secret stuff. I think our sergeant carried a top secret. But there was 3 of us to a shift. We had each there were 3 TT-76 big machines. teletype machines, basically. And there were three of us to a shift, and we had a sergeant, and I think the sergeant had probably the top clearance because the rest of us hadn't been there, too long.
Mhm.
And anyway, but we just sat there. We're reading things that were happening on the ground with basically with the Arvon troops, because it wasn't our troops in the army in the war. Our troops were advising the Arvon troops in the war. There were a few American that were sent home that got killed in action, but not like it got to be when it all went to hell. But no, that was us. And then in our other days, we actually we basically carried a Class A pass in our pocket. Anytime you wanted to go into Saigon or whatever, I had a couple people that I'd gone through language school with and so forth that were there with me, and I'd go see them. One of them was an E6 sergeant that I spent quite a lot of time with when we were in Monterey, and we just, because I was a little older, we just kind of hooked up a little bit, and so he had a girlfriend over there, and we would go to her house and that kind of stuff, and go to the beach a little bit. So it got me off the Presidio, or off post, and then it was strange. He lived in a hotel downtown, right off the main square, not too far from the Capitol building, and he was up on the 5th or 6th floor, up high enough so you could see over all the buildings that faced the streets and so forth. And because of all that had gone on with the French, and then the North Vietnamese and all that stuff, there were a lot of people that had come from the north, come south, and a lot of them went into the cities. And the front had all these buildings and bars and whatever else, but in space between the streets, between the buildings, you look and they're all tin roofs. They're little 8x8 or 10x8 or whatever tin roofs, and people are living in those things. And there was no open space. And there were alleys, of course, that cut through. The people could, but it was a strange thing to see.
Yeah.
Saigon was a beautiful city. Parts of it had been a beautiful city at some point, more so. By the time I got there were so many people coming into it that they'd filled it up, and it was busy.
Yeah. Now, what was maybe the hardest part of adjusting to military life for you? Or was it all just fairly easy because it was so closely to the life you were already living?
Well, I guess just the regimentation, there was no freedom much as far as you especially basic, and then while you're going to cook school, as I said, I would go home one night a week and every other weekend, and my wife would come in and pick me up, and she had the car, so and that was pretty close. And the language school was good, because that was, as I said, we carried a Class A pass in our pocket in Vietnam, but we also did at Presidio Monterey.
Mm-hmm.
We had classes. We had classes. I'm trying to remember. I know we had classes at night a lot, in the evening. they put us through. We'd have morning and noon or morning, afternoon, and evening classes. They put us through quickly, and they said that was 6 weeks there, but still on the weekends and stuff, because basically civilians were teaching us at Presidio, at a language school, and I finished the school. I had a little bit of knowledge of the language. I came home for 3 weeks, back to Michigan, and then I went back to Oakland Terminal for another week. So a month later, I landed in Vietnam. Do you think I had much of that left? Besides, I was all with Americans anyway, wherever I was. We landed, and they had these. I think they're 15 by 30. Anyway, they're large, big, brown tents, the big ones, and they were probably. See, we had 8 in each hooch. There was probably 24 of us in one of those tents or bunks, double high, and it was hot and sweaty. It's June. It was ugly. It was ugly, and we were there for. Or I was there because we didn't know. We were dispersed from there. I was there for 6 days, I think, before they sent me out to the signal company. And the signal company was basically in a same area, or we shared an area with the MPs. And so the MPs had good food, they had great showers, and almost all of us would go down there and shower and eat down there every once in a while.
Gotta get the good food where you can, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So when did you finally arrive in Vietnam?
I believe it was June 21st.
Of
63.
63.
I was in country 5 months and 21 days.
Okay. All right. During that time, anything crazy happen?
No, getting there happened.
Yeah.
We took mats. They had mats 4-engine turboprops planes that Vats used, which is military air transport.
Okay.
And we flew out of Hickam, or out of Travis Air Force Base.
Okay.
And we went to Hawaii, and we went to Midway, and we went to Kadena, and then we went to Saigon. And every time we landed, we had 3 engines. We lost an engine each time between each hop. This stuff was old. It's World War II stuff. They quit building all that stuff, and so all they had was what was left after the war, and they shut down the building all the extra planes and building all that stuff. So it was older, but we flew. They had almost no air conditioning in the plane, and we were at 10,000 feet. We could see Whitecaps all the way over there. And so, but coming back, I told you before, coming back we were on a Boeing 990, leather seats, air conditioning, 16 hours back, 36 hours going over.
When you were also talking a little bit before about how really not much happened the first 5 months or so that you were over there in Vietnam, really.
Well, there wasn't. Yeah, right. You're right. Until the last 10 days I was there, we just went to work. Swimming pools. They had an Olympic swimming pool. I made one jump off the top of an Olympic swimming pool. That's a long ways up. That's a long ways down. And once was enough. But I had to do it once. We went to the pool, and then here's this, tower standing there, and the challenge, I had to accept it, and I took it once. But anyway, other than that, we could go into Saigon. A lot of the guys went in there evenings and so forth for other entertainment. I was already married. I didn't want to bring anything home. So,
How did you stay in touch with your friends and family on that note? You talk about having a wife. Did
just
you
mail.
just mail?
Yeah. I think on our anniversary, July 13th, I think I called home. I was able to call home. If I remember right.
Okay.
But I said that was the only, because it was very expensive to call home.
Mm-hmm.
And we didn't have any money. Well, I went in as an E1 at $96 a month. I got to E2 at $113 a month. I got to E3 at 125 or 6 or something. And E4 I was $140 for 2 months or less than 3 months, and was home. So there wasn't a lot of money.
So was mail reliable though? It was every day.
Yeah, 6-7 days.
Yep.
Well, they were flying the mail back and forth, so
Yeah.
she put it in and address it to that address, and it would come through on mail. But yeah, once probably 2 letters a week.
At least it was something, it helped
Yeah.
with the morale, I'm sure.
Yeah.
To be able to hear and stuff like that, what's
Yeah.
going on, and talk to them. Now looking at those again, we're not going to talk. We'll talk about those other 10 days here in just a moment. But that first 5 months, do you recall anything humorous or unusual at all happening?
No. It was the routine was every afternoon at 2:00. Monsoons came in, and it rained for an hour, poured for an hour. We lived in hooches, okay, raw wood floors, and raw wood frame. And there was a lapboard siding up just about the same height, or just maybe a little bit higher than a bunk, than the beds that we used, the folding beds,
Okay.
military. And then from there on, it's screen up to the eaves, and then the top was like corrugated fiber roofing, rattled hard. And then we had a wardrobe. Each of us had a wardrobe. There was 8 of us to a hooch. So once it quit raining, you stayed on the boards, because otherwise you're going to be ankle deep in the mud until it would rain maybe 45 minutes. And by 4:00 you could walk on it again. The sun baked it again.
Oh.
That was the thing that was probably the most annoying or difficult part of that whole thing. I used to watch the rats. Our hooch was right next to the fence on the outside, and then there were some buildings that looked like what you see is the road commission builds these shelters that they put the gravel in and so forth. They're kind of open.
Mm-hmm.
And there was 3 sections. There was one right there with 3 sections, and the Vietnamese people lived in those because they were over. They didn't have houses to live in. They lived in there. It was usually 2 or 3 families in each of those 3 sections. But we would watch the rats, and the rats were bigger than cats. I mean, they looked like damn beaver or something like that. They were huge. Anyway, and of course sanitation was zilch. Nothing. Outside the fence. We had restrooms, but they were they were cleaned out every once in a while, the honey wagons. But you know, you walked on the boards on paths made of wood around the whole thing, but it was always hot and always wet, and it was just not, for me, not a comfortable situation because I don't do the heat real well.
All right. So for 5 months you battled the elements, but the last
That was my most annoying thing. Yeah, with the elements.
for summarizing purposes.
Yeah.
So then what happened the last 10 days?
Well, one day we're in camp, and all of a sudden there's an alarm sounded to fall in. So we all go down to the central parade area, or whatever you want to call it, it's a common area, and fell in by patrols or whatever squads. And they announced that we're going to go up by Benoit to a rifle range, and you're going to learn to use the M14, because they were just issuing them, brand new, yeah. And we said fine, and they said, well, go to the where we were storing the weapons there, metal container things, and get your weapon, and then come fall back in. So we did. And when I got there, and when about a third of our company got there, we were issued the M1 carbine. Most of the rest of them were all issued the M14. And it's just what they had when we landed in supply for a weapon, because you had to have a weapon, was when we landed, that was all they had in stock was the M1 carbine. Anyway, we all fell back in, and we had a second lieutenant that thought he was awful special. Anyway, and we're on standing, and he walks around and he looks at us and he says, "What are you doing with that weapon, that rifle?" I said, "This is what was issued to me when I got here." And he said, "Well, we're going to learn to do the M14. Go put that away." And about a third of the company, over 30 people, put their rifles back. And nobody, the company commander and the sergeants and stuff, didn't catch it. They didn't see what was going on because they were in a hurry, because the CID had told them, "Get the hell out of town because we're about to have a coup." We didn't know that, but somebody knew it in that company, or they wouldn't have done what they were doing. So anyway, so we load in the trucks, deuce and a halves, and start out of town, north out of Saigon on 1 towards Benoit, and we get 10, 15 miles out of town, and all of a sudden, here's this convoy of army, Vietnamese army, coming at it. We're looking at that a little shaky. We knew we were wrong, the third of us that didn't have weapons, because they took us out beyond the third ring, and you were not allowed to leave, to go out of that circle without a weapon. In fact, you were supposed to have a weapon before you got to that. So we knew there was a problem, or something was wrong. Anyway, and all of a sudden, here comes the Argonne army, and we weren't sure who they were, because nobody, at that time, you didn't know who was who for sure and who was on whose side, or because the commitments hadn't been made yet. All right, And anyway, and then they're all waving, and so we're waving back. We want to be friendly, and that convoy was, I don't know, 3 or 4 miles long, and we went up, and then the rifle range would have been to the east of the road, or northeast, and so we turned off and went back there, all back into where the rifle range was, and we all fell out, and they had a little discussion about the fact we didn't have weapons, but nobody made a fuss about it at the time. And those that didn't have a weapon lined up behind the guys that did have, so that we were learning how to use this thing. Because they'd been issued it, but they'd never had a chance to practice with it or do anything with it. So the guy that had been issued one was on the line first, and we were going to learn after they got through, after they had their turn. And before we ever got to it, all of a sudden a helicopter lands, and I think he was a colonel, got out of the helicopter and talked to our captain, or our commander, and they had a little talk, and finally they said, we've got to leave. So we all loaded back up in the trucks, sealed everything up, and left and headed back towards the highway. But during the discussion, apparently they had said we're going to just send you on up to Benoit, because we had a campment inside of the large Arvon camp up there. And so anyway, we're on our way out to the highway, and before we got there a ways, we're driving down the road, and I happened to be in a truck that was pretty close to the front, and I could see out the front, and here's this Jeep sitting in the middle of the road, and there's a 30 caliber machine gun sitting in the Jeep, mounted, and Arvon troops on the ground. Well, the leaders went up, and sergeants or whoever was in charge went up and talked to them, and they said, no, you can't go out. And so they sent us in. We were right by a little village or so. They sent us in, and they put the trucks in a circle. We all got out, and we're sitting around just talking and waiting for something to happen. Meanwhile, they're on the radio back and forth to somebody, you got to let us out, or what are we going to do? What's going to happen? And we're all sitting there, and all of a sudden, a slug, you could hear it, just whistle right over top, way up in the air, over top of us. And we all looked at each other, and it was just one. Never happened again, but we didn't know for sure what was up. But pretty soon they come back, and they came down and said, okay, we're going to Benoit, load back up in the trucks. And they let us out, put us on the highway. We went the rest of the way up and into the camp. And they had good buildings and everything, billets and stuff there that they'd taken over from the French, I'm sure. I don't know who had built the buildings, but it wasn't America because we hadn't been there that long. And we fell out, and here's a third of us without a weapon. And this colonel come walking down through there, and he's looking at us, and he challenged us, why don't you have it? And we explained to him, and he said, who did it? That guy. We pointed out the lieutenant, and he just walked over to the lieutenant and calmly said, come with me. And there was a brick building headquarters building, not too far from where we were in formation, and they went in. All of a sudden, there was noise out of that basement. He was shouting. That colonel just tearing that lieutenant up. And we said the building looked like it was shaking. It wasn't, but you could hear the noise. You couldn't hear exactly what he had to say, but you could hear the noise out of the basement. He took him out there. He took him down there where, and we didn't witness it, but we knew what was going on. Well, they had barracks there, and we all said, we're spending the night here, and we'll see what we're going to do with you tomorrow. So we all got to the barracks and found a bed and so forth, and we're talking, and we don't have weapons. We don't know if somebody's going to attack us from within the Arvon or anybody. What the hell's going on? And they put out guards, and I said, I know if something starts, I'm going to find me a guy that's got a weapon, and I'm going to stay right behind him, and if something happens, I'm going to have a weapon myself. If something happens to him, it's a little cold, but we're going to do survival here. And as it turned out, we weren't attacked, nothing happened, and so forth. The next morning, all of a sudden, they came through it after breakfast and said, load up. And they took us out to a little airfield right there and put us on helicopters and flew us back to Townsend, back to Saigon, back to the airport. And by that time, the coup had completed. They killed Ziminu, and the generals had taken over with CID help, CID help. We knew who did it. That was the first of, I think, at least three coups that happened during that, especially the early years of the war. But anyway, I got lucky, and I got the end seat or outside seat in a helicopter, so that I had the strap on, and from right here, out there was nothing, all air, and I could see down into the paddies. And we were concerned a little bit that what if there's some Viet Cong out there with a rifle? We weren't high enough, but what they couldn't shoot at us with a rifle. We were a little worried about that, but it turned out there wasn't anything. But there were people in the rice paddies when we flew over. We could see them.
Now, as we approach the end of your service here in your time in Vietnam, coming back to the States and adjusting back to civilian life, did you ever meet resistance? Was there protest at this time going on?
No, not even a little bit. Nothing. I came back, blended in. We landed again at Travis on the 11th and got home on the 12th. And within a couple of days, I had a job for a Christmas job with Montgomery Wards in Hillsdale, selling shoes again, working there, and at least for a holiday, and then figure out what I was going to do after that. So I just went back to work, and then on the 22nd of November, I'm standing in the middle of that store, and they announced that Kennedy had been shot. It was emotional.
Yeah.
Because I but it was emotional for everybody.
The unknown, the uncertainty, right?
Just out. a little more so maybe.
Well, yeah. I mean, at that point, I'm sure in your mind immediately when he was shot and killed, is this going to recall me? Is this going to make me have to go back? Am I going to have to go back to Vietnam?
I don't. At the time, I don't think we had that.
Okay.
I don't think we had that feeling. Later, my son was born in September of '63, and 64, and there were a couple of times, especially when Johnson was doing the build-up and stuff, because I was a 214 field experience and instructor. So my MOS was verifiable and decent, and I wasn't sure that they weren't going to come back and get me again when the real build-up came. But I was not, where I was living in Owasso, there was no place for a cryptographer anywhere within 50 miles of me. So I never got assigned to a reserve unit or anything. I think they said anyway that I was placed in an on-call or some I don't remember exactly how they worded it, but based in St. Louis, Missouri. That's the central.
Yep.
Yeah. But I never had to go. But there were a couple of times during build-ups that we got a little nervous.
Sure. Looking back at your service as a whole, do you think it changed you? And if so, how do you think it changed you?
Yeah, it changed me a little. I was proud to have served. I am proud to have served. But I knew I would be. I graduated from high school that I was only 17, so I was young anyway. And I was too young for Korea. If I had graduated from high school while Korea was still going, I would have enlisted at that time. Regardless of whether Korea was good or not. I think Korea was better than as it turned out, some of the other ones that we've got messed up with. No, I was proud to have served, and it. I think it gave me a feeling of confidence in our country, and as sometimes screwed up as the military is, it's a hell of an organization, and it's my opinion of a lot of the stuff that's gone on over the last 20 years or so, that if we still had to draft a lot of the crap that we've seen, drugs and a lot of that other stuff wouldn't have happened, because the military would have made men out of some of these guys that they think they're men, but they're not.
Yeah, it's we might both agree that the military is not always the best with their militariable judgments, but it does instill order, discipline.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Into you that you don't get anywhere else, and that you got to go somewhere.
That's the part that you get from serving that you get nowhere else. Mm-hmm. And you can talk about playing football. We never played football because they didn't have it in high school. I played baseball, and I was lousy at basketball. I boxed the Golden Gloves instead of playing basketball for 1 year, and then my senior year I went to go back out, and the coach, who was the principal of the school at the time, said, George, you're a senior. If you insist, I'll have to put you on the bench, but you know you're not going to play, and you're going to be sitting in place of somebody that really, a sophomore that you really should be out there. Would you be the manager and keep score for us when we're in away games? Yeah, I said, yeah, I'll do that. Not a problem. So, and I think that I had that in high school, but I think also that got reinforced some when I was in the service. The cooperation with people, working with and taking on duty or not duty and that stuff. That I've always worked hard. I keep saying I run so fast that time can't keep up with me. It's catching up with me. I'm 85, so, and I know it's catching up with me. But there's a hell of a lot of people that never got where I'm at. Especially to get to my age and in the health and the condition I'm in. And I ache every day, so.
Well, thank you for that. Are you yourself a part of any veteran organizations, or have you ever done any reunions with the guys that you served?
I've never done any reunions with anybody in my lifetime. When we were working and stuff, my wife, unbeknownst to me, paid for my lifetime membership in the American Legion, which were posters out here at the VFW. Mm-hmm. Same place. I was for a long time. When she started, I was on the state, under the state Legion, and then I transferred to this post over here.
Okay.
And then, it's a different story.
Well, do you like the veteran organizations that we have today? Would you recommend them to the guys coming out of the service and girls coming out of the service today?
Coming out, yes. I worked with Boy Scouts for 10 years. I worked with Little League, coached and managed and ran Westwood Little League for a year as president. My wife's been involved with it. Spent a lot of time with that. I've done a lot of civic stuff out United Way, substance use group. I ran I was the head, or whatever you want to call it, of the Southwest Michigan Substance Use Advisory Council for 10 years. And that was after 20 years before that, so, or so. Involved, for 10 years, involved for it. Because I started in 91 and stayed with it until 2016. But I don't find myself needing to be involved in those in the organizations like that. Okay, I just don't.
Yep, that's fair. Well, George, as we get ready to conclude your oral history in here, is there anything that we haven't talked about that you might want to include in your oral history? I know we've covered quite a bit in the last little bit.
Well, there's a lot of stuff that don't necessarily pertain to military at all. But as I said, I'm proud of the fact that I was able to serve and contribute, and I'm realistic enough to know that some of the stuff that I got involved with, that some of the stuff we do this for is not necessarily the way we would like to have had it presented to us was not okay, or it was presented in a way that we find over time was not accurate. Vietnam was a good one, part of that. And of course, the Iraq was even worse, as far as I'm concerned. The messes that we have now are just a mess. I'm not at all proud of what Netanyahu's doing in Gaza. I understand what he's doing. I understand that that the Jewish people have lived for thousands of years oppressed, split out, sent somewhere, threatened to be annihilated, being annihilated, and all that stuff. And I understand what Hamas did in October and why he's mad and why he wants to eliminate him. But I don't like his tactics. I think there's a better way to do it, because he's done, in my mind, almost a genocide of the Palestinian people. Not Hamas, the Palestinian people.
Once you get trained up and you go to war and you go and join the army, I want to say you're a little bit more hesitant to want to go to war, right? Like I want to say, like, even myself, I would want to keep away from war as much as possible nowadays. It's just not a good situation. Yeah. No good can really come from modern total war that we have today.
I understand that. And the other day I heard somebody talking about their dad that had been in service. And he'd been in Vietnam, but he'd been there in the ugly time after I was there.
During Tet, probably.
They've got 12 years of it. Sometimes it's all hell. I didn't even get into that, and I haven't hunted since I come home. Because that weapon that I picked up, and my shotgun was never made to shoot a person, human being. And I own it, and I still own. No, I gave it to my grandson. I have my dad's, which he bought in 1927 in the basement right now, and along with some other weapons. At one time I owned 9 weapons, so now I've got 5. They're still mine. But I haven't hunted. I haven't had a desire to kill. Okay. There's been a few instances that I've thought about it, but they had to do with my children. They had to do with some bad people with my children.
Yeah.
I say one.
And that's understandable. Last question, and then we'll wrap it up here. What would you like people to know or remember from your story the most? If you could summarize your whole thing in like 10 or 15 words or 20 words, your story, what would that be?
That this country is a good country. The United States, it's like they said a long time ago, you got a republic if you can keep it. And we need to keep it, because it's the best way, with all the flaws that it has, it's the best way to live for a society, for a country. And be proud of it, and assume your responsibility for it. We've got too many people that just won't assume the responsibility for living the world properly, and I'll quit for that. I had a lot of other things I could say, but they were all personal.
Well, George, I want to thank you for your time today, and thank you for sitting down with me and having this oral history.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.
It was my pleasure.